Okay, it's 7 o'clock. This is the City of Grosse Pointe Park. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Nick Seisland. I'm the City Manager of Grosse Pointe Park. Tonight we're calling it the Schaap virtual town hall. In it include myself as capacity as City Manager, Mayor Bob Denner as the Mayor of City of Grosse Pointe Park, and Jaime Rae Turnbull, the spokesperson for the Schaap Center. Before you tonight, what we're going to do is going to be a little different than city council meetings regarding resident feedback and or questions. I'm going to go through and make some statements. At that time too, I'll ask if the mayor has anything or Jaime Rae Turnbull. I do want to ask the public to please turn off their cameras. Thank you. And so what we'll do, to be fair to every resident that wants to call in, I would please ask that you state your question and or comment to one at a time, because we want to give ability to everybody to be able to ask a question. And at that time, after you've seen that everybody has had a chance to provide a question, then please use the raise hand function per as the city statement. At this time, what we're going to do, we're still looking at that we'll probably hold this till about 8:30. However, if there's a couple more questions in place, that we'll go ahead and move beyond that point. And as well, anything that is not, there's no answer at this exact time, I'll certainly do my best in capacity as city manager to provide those answers in our recent Q&A that I'll read off, and that's on our city website. And this information will also be presented at the Planning Commission meeting and at the City Council meeting. So before I get started, there's a lot of questions of residents right now on what is the process for the Schaap Center. First thing, we're going to have this town hall tonight. Afterwards, there will be a Planning Commission on Wednesday for site plan review. And afterwards, this will go to the City Council for final approval. At this time, I'm going to go through and read the FAQs from the City of Grosse Pointe Park. I'll do it as fast as I can because I know there's a lot of questions out there. And the one thing I do want to make mention of these FAQs, this has all been reviewed by the city in the agreements that have been previously made. A lot of these discussions here are stuff that were done in the past with the City Council and or the City Manager. And so I'm just doing my best in my capacity as City Manager to provide the facts that have been presented and or asked. So I certainly encourage your comments and questions. Let's start off, and if you want to follow along with me, if you're on our city website under Schaap Center Development, or if you have not seen already and advertised on the city Facebook pages, the FAQs regarding the Schaap Center from the City of Grosse Pointe Park. What is the relationship of URIF to the city and other public entities? URIF is an independent 501c3 public charity organized under Michigan law as a nonprofit corporation. The URIF was formed in 2012 by then City Manager Dale Kraniak to handle the financial donations made to the city. For example, it received approximately $50,000 to purchase one of the trolleys that residents and visitors have enjoyed for a number of years. The URIF has since separated itself from the city. Grosse Pointe Park and the URIF are parties to certain agreements that were approved by City Council during open meetings. Future agreements between GPP and the URIF are anticipated, such as an MOU between the GPP DDA and the URIF, which will be at a public meeting to be determined. There is no current representation on the URIF board by the city, DDA, or TIFA officials. Those letters have been put, they are actually here on file at City Hall, by then former City Manager, DDA TIFA Director Dale Kraniak, and Mayor Bob Denner. The Mayor and the former City Manager were both on the board but resigned in 2019. And at this time, former council member Barbara Detweiler is now on the URIF board, a position that she assumed after her term on City Council when it expired. Does the parking plan presented by the Schaap team rely on residential streets? No. A detailed parking plan will be presented to the Planning Commission by the Schaap Center design team. Presentations have been communicated to the public by the Schaap Center team, showcasing a total of about 600 available parking spaces. Upon review, the City Administration has requested a revised parking plan to be presented at the Planning Commission, reducing the use of this on-street parking. including those on Weyburn, Maryland, Lake Point, Barrington, or Pemberton, where there have been previous parking plans displayed. These will not be needed. The design team will include on-site lots, existing lots near the Schaap Center site, and a proposed city-owned landscape parking lot adjacent to City Hall in front of the Grosse Pointe Library. The development of the new city lot will be funded through DDA tax recapture, not through any general fund revenues or additional taxes. In addition to use by the Schaap Center, the new lot will be publicly available to supplement parking for City Hall, library, and other uses. Is the City of GPP providing property for free for construction of the Schaap Center? No. In October of 2019, the City Council approved a purchase agreement with the URIF that included the city's commitment to transfer title to the lots where the existing DPW facility on Jefferson is located, and it will move to a new facility to be constructed on Mack. Property owned at Jefferson Altar, formerly the long-abandoned Deck Bar and Party Store, and to vacate the Weyburn right-of-way from Jefferson to the current dead end at St. Ambrose once fundraising has been reached by the URIF. However, after the October 2019 vote, the city negotiated some important changes, including that the URIF will pay approximately $410,000.62, supported by broker opinion of value for the sites, which will be sent to the city upon URIF receiving deeds to the subject property. The city completing the new DPW on Mack, and the approval of an MOU between the DDA and the URIF. Has an appraisal been conducted? If not, why not? No, because there is no bank or financial institution financing involved. What, if anything, is the DDA's financial commitment for construction of the Schaap Center? Neither the city nor the DDA have made any commitments for the funding of the construction of the Schaap Center. However, the DDA has made 4 specific commitments to the URIF of some of its tax recapture, as documented in the minutes for the Schaap Center that are available online. The DDA, as a tax recapture entity, is charged with spending the tax recapture for the benefit of the district and represents no new taxes to residents. Each of the commitments was made to further the purpose of the DDA. There is some misinformation in the community that needs to be clarified. It has been asserted that the city estimated $50,000 for this entire project. That is untrue. The city provided a very rough estimate of $50,000 for the staging area in Jefferson in front of the Ewald branch. The amount did not include, and was never represented to include, the cost of charges to the bus turnaround. The first was to complete a new bus turnaround staging space on Jefferson near Lake Point. This was completed in 2019 at a cost of $94,755.89, including design, county permitting, legal, and construction. Grosse Pointe Park and City of Detroit entered into an MOU approved by council in July of 2019, which DDOT would sell the DDOT lot for $300,000 to the URIF. In return, Grosse Pointe Park, with funds from the DDA, constructed a bus turnaround that encompassed the traffic island of Jefferson in front of the library. The second is to fund the demolition of the former small office building, or better known as the Ferrioli building on Jefferson, that was acquired by the URIF. This was completed in 2019 at a cost of $38,605. The building itself was purchased by the URIF and not the city. The third commitment is to fund the design and construction of a new public parking lot adjacent to City Hall and in front of the Ewald branch of the Grosse Pointe Library. The estimated cost for this project is $75,000. Design and construction bids will be obtained when authorized by the DDA board, likely in 2021. The parking lot itself will be owned by the city. The fourth commitment is to fund the demo of the existing DPW facility in Jefferson once the new DPW building is complete and occupied in 2021. The budget estimate for that demo is $50,000. Bids would be obtained for the demo. Next question, will the city provide services to the Schaap Center? If so, why are they? The city's Public Works Department will only be providing lawn maintenance to the Schaap Center as it does for the Ewald branch, including tree trimming, which I'll add in here. In the winter months, the city will provide snow removal services for on-site parking areas, just as it does for the parking lot share with the Ewald branch, and salting, and I'll add that in there as well. This was in the purchase agreement of October 2019 by the City Council. Public safety will be available for traffic control, just as it is provided for school events and events on Kirchville and Charlevoix. This will not require the employment of additional city staff or add significant costs to the Grosse Pointe Park public safety. Is the city spending money to create a space specifically for a Schaap Center employee? If so, what? No. Our City Hall has ample available office space, some of which will be used for a Schaap Center employee. The city will not incur any additional cost to house an employee. As part of the City Hall renovation project, no specific space will be created specifically for this employee. Will the DDA provide operational support at the Schaap Center? If so, what? Yes. The DDA is committed to provide $75,000 a year in support during the DDA's existence, which is currently authorized until June 30th, 2026. The funds used to support the Schaap Center will come from the DDA's tax recapture, not from the city's general fund or additional taxes. URIF has agreed that this commitment will end when the Schaap Center Endowment Fund reaches $15 million or June 30th, 2026, whichever comes first. Does the city have an ownership stake with the Schaap Center? No. The Schaap Center will be owned and operated by an independent nonprofit, the URIF, and its successor, the Grosse Pointe Park Council for the Arts. Did the city have other developers approach the city about the vacant land at the former Deck Bar site in Detroit near the corner of Maryland Jefferson? Yes, they did. The city tried to sell the Deck Bar location to a purchaser that would develop a use that was consistent with the goals of the city and the DDA and the surrounding area, including the Detroit Merit Academy elementary schools and taking into account rush hour traffic at a busy intersection. Very preliminary expressions of interest were made by Tim Hortons, a Wayne State extended learning facility for the School of Mortuary Science, and 2 senior condo complexes. The city and council at the time decided not to pursue these avenues for various reasons, including that they were not backed up by a firm financial commitment and were otherwise inconsistent with the city's objectives. What is the history of the property sold to Dr. Schaap and sold to him in 2012 at a price of $300,000? The sale of the property, which borders Jefferson and Maryland, this was sold in June of 2012. The city needed the funds at a time that it was struggling with reduced tax revenues resulting from the recession of 2008 and resulting depressed assessed values. The city council at the time considered Dr. Schaap's history as a philanthropist and his support of the community in improving the sale. The property was acquired by the city in 3 distinct transactions. The first was in December 2001 and was for property at the corner of Jefferson and Maryland, which is 15027 Jefferson. The property housed retail, a glass shop, and some second-floor apartments. The building was becoming blighted and difficult for the owner to maintain. It was the decision of the city council at the time to acquire the property to eliminate blight and for potential redevelopment at a cost of $275,000. The second was in May of 2004 for 15019 and 15017 Jefferson. The properties fronted Jefferson and included Brosnan's Bar and a laundry coin shop. The buildings were becoming blighted and difficult for the owners to maintain. It was the decision of City Council at the time to acquire the property to eliminate blight and for potential redevelopment at a cost of $790,000. The third was in December 2007 and was for property fronting Maryland adjacent to St. Ambrose of 1011 Maryland. This property was a 26-unit apartment building with insufficient parking. At the time, our nearby rental district of flats was struggling both with too little demand and insufficient parking. It was the decision of the City Council at the time to acquire the property to reduce rental supply, reduce parking contention, support district landlords, and unite the parcel with the Jefferson, Maryland parcel for potential development at a cost of $1,040,000. What is the history of the Schaap Center at the Lavin Center? Although unrelated to the Schaap Center project, this topic has been raised related to previous philanthropic support of GPP from the Schaaps and GPP Foundation. The concept of a second theater as part of the GPP-owned and operated Lavin Center at our Windmill Point Park was developed by the former city manager as an additional amenity for GPP residents and their guests. Dr. Schaap and Carol Schaap offered to donate $300,000 towards its construction. At the January 2014 meeting of City Council, the Council reviewed the administration's cost estimates for the theater and agreed to accept the gift and approve the theater, anticipating additional costs of approximately $150,000 to complete the project. The actual costs for the city, or for the entire project, were $773,673.92 for the theater. The GPP Foundation and the Schaaps paid $671,392 $340.03, and the city paid $104,000, $516.51. The portion of the city cost was offset by ticket revenues for 2 years. Can the Grosse Pointe Park DDA legally provide support funds to the Schaap Center? Yes. Per the city attorney legal firm of Bodman, with regard to financial support for an art center, subsection 1 of section 207(1) of the recodified TIF Act, which covers the DDA of 2018, states the following. The board may improve land and reconstruct, rehab, restore and preserve, equip, improve, maintain, repair, and operate any building, including multiple family dwellings and any necessary desirable appurtenances to that property within the downtown district for the use in whole or in part of any public or private person or corp, or a combination of them. It is the DDA's legal counsel's opinion that section 207(1)(I) of part 2 of the Act provides the DDA's legal authority to provide financial support for the Schaap Center and, I'm not going to say that word again, and appurtenances thereto, a project that the DDA and the city has generally pursued for at least 8 years. Section 207(1)(I) of part 2 of the Act provides the DDA has legal authority to use DDA funds to support an art center and any necessary desirable, there's that word again, thereto. In the DDA district, because such support would be consistent with the goals of the Act of facilitating economic growth and development. Other cities have provided similar support. For example, the city of Detroit's DDA contributed well over $35 million in public funds to improvements to the Little Caesars Arena and related facilities such as a practice facility and infrastructure. Does the DDA amend the development plan and or city master plan discuss an art center? Yes and no. The DDA's 2012 amended development plan cites a cultural center improvement, including design and annual support. Land acquisition for public works through redevelopment, that's in quote exactly what it says. And that's available on the city's website under documents and DDA. The city's 2012 master plan does not include language referencing an art center. However, the proposed revised master plan of 2019 stated, Jefferson Avenue is the introduction to the park. The north side of Jefferson is dedicated to civic use. The area between City Hall and Alta Road is in need of development and beautification. A cultural center would be a significant improvement, end quote. The Planning Commission approved the revised master plan in December of 2019. However, the City Council in December 2019 rejected the revised plan for further review and directed the city to seek the review by a professional planner in addition to the professional planner already on the Planning Commission. I tried to make that as fast as I could. I apologize. At this time, I will let Mayor Denner make a quick statement, and then I'll allow Jaime Rae Turnbull, and then we'll turn it over to the residents for their questions. Mayor Denner?
Yeah, before I get started, it's just been called to my attention that Zoom topped out at 100 participants. And so we probably have a problem with other people trying to get in. And I believe we thought the number was much higher than that in terms of the capacity. So I wanted to call this to the administrator's attention to see if that can be rectified. Don't know if it can, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. Okay. Okay, so unfortunately, let me make one quick statement about that. I do know that we do have a capacity limit with our Zoom meetings. I do not believe that we can extend that at this time. However, what we will be doing is we will have this recording on the city website under Schaap Center Development for those that have not been able to reach this and or come in late. I do apologize for that issue. And if you have had questions and are not able to attend, I would please encourage you to email myself, citymanager@grossepointepark.org. Okay, thanks, Nick. First, a few comments. First, I want to thank Nick for pushing for and organizing this town hall. He's worked very hard and has brought to our city administration best practices that will serve Grosse Pointe Park for many years. I hope that tonight's town hall is productive for all. We're here to discuss the proposed Schaap Center. However, I'd first like to provide some context for this project based on my 38 years of living in the park and 17 years of service as a member of council and now as mayor. It has been the vision of previous city leaders to enable the best quality of life possible for our residents. This vision has resulted in many successes brought about by efficient government, generous philanthropists, and other sources of revenue, such as the tax recapture mechanisms of our DDA on Jefferson and our TIFA for the Northwest sector. The roots of these successes are in the key decisions around 30 years ago of establishing the DDA, the TIFA, and the Grosse Pointe Park Foundation. The results are impressive. The amenities in our parks are second to none. The Northwest sector is no longer a struggling neighborhood, but is thriving. City services are excellent, and city finances are well managed. The Jefferson Quarter has been transformed from a crime-plagued, blighted collection of vacant car dealers, restaurants, a failing movie theater, and miscellaneous businesses to a pleasant landscape gateway to Grosse Pointe Park with small offices, neighborhood-focused businesses, a popular condominium complex, and a public library. Grosse Pointe Park is a highly desired address. I have to say this is in contrast to when I purchased my home in 1982. I had many people try to talk me out of living in Grosse Pointe Park in a struggling and possibly failing city. The one area left on Jefferson without renewal is the area plan for the Schaap Center, including a portion of the site in Detroit that is consistent with the goal of blurring the border with Detroit and Jefferson East's goal of revitalization of the Jefferson Quarter. I look forward to continuing the relentless progress of our community. Thanks. I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Now I'd like to ask Leah Smith to allow members of the public to come in the queue. And this will be very similar to what we've done in the past with 3 minutes, where Leah will put up a timer. Please make your comment and or question. We will certainly do our best to answer those questions for you, and I'll be the MC. Either myself, Mayor, and or Jaime Rae Turnbull will be asking those questions. And for any of those that we do not have availability of an answer at this time, I'll certainly do my best to update the FAQs and receive your feedback. So with that said, I'm going to ask Leah to start the queue process, and let's have our first question.
Thank you, Manager Franklin. So the first thing I'm going to do, just so all the public I apologize, I was muted. So the first person up for public comment is phone number ending in 4516. I have asked you to unmute yourself. And please go ahead.
Hi, this is Martin Steiger. I'm a Grosse Pointe Park resident. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Martin.
Thank you. My question, for most of the businesses in the park, if they fail, it's not a crisis from a real estate standpoint because usually they're occupying space that another business can come in and utilize. So, for example, if the Hungry Howie's on Jefferson goes out of business, another business can easily come in and replace them in that location. The commercial space can be repurposed and used by another business. But this art center is obviously different than a 1,000 square foot commercial space on Jefferson. So what happens to the art center facility, the actual building, if the art center cannot sustain itself financially? Does the city have a plan for that possibility? Because a 501c3, the Grosse Pointe Park Council for the Arts, is being formed to take ownership of the art center and run it once it is built. And the law significantly limits how a 501c3 can dispose of its assets if it's forced to dissolve. So what is the city's exposure or liability if the art center cannot sustain itself financially? And what is the city's plan for what happens to the facility if that occurs?
Okay, thank you. First, what I'm going to do, Martin, to answer your question, I think there was something related to Jaime Rae Turnbull that she can answer, and then I will respond as well thereafter. Jaime Rae.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. Really, your question is about the sustainability, and at many of the presentations that we have had, we have talked about the endowment and the commitment from the community, and the Planning Commission is going to be seeing that in further detail along with an operating budget. But we are very confident that there is the the backing of fundraising from not just the Council for the Arts or the Arts Council, but also those programming partners such as the Grosse Pointe Theater that have been in business for decades, and the Grosse Pointe Symphony Orchestra that have a proven success. So anything related to the success and sustainability really leads back to fundraising, and there's great confidence that there will remain that support.
And from the city's perspective, you know, there's certainly a risk of businesses that come into the park, whether or not they, you know, are sustainable. This is something that certainly is part of business, and certainly that is a decision that the city council, after approval or you know, planning commission, when they evaluate the site plan, will have to look into. Leah, next question.
Okay, Mr. McComb, you will be next. I'm going to share the timer for you.
Great. Can you hear me?
And then if you would, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, great. First off, telling people that the recording is available without giving them a chance to speak is exactly the problem that people are raising about the heavy-handed way that this is being pushed through. Schedule another town hall with a higher attendance allowance and stream it live on Facebook. This is unacceptable. Now, on to my question. What due diligence is the city doing on the attendance numbers Europe is projecting? They're claiming 50,000 attendees per year with an economic impact of $1.778 million. Europe have tried to make it appear that their numbers are from a study by the nonprofit Foundation American for the Arts. But further investigation reveals that the organization did not perform such a study, nor will they be able to do so for years. When presented with these facts, Europe admitted that they used an online calculator rather than a real study and have provided no sources to back up their numbers. Now, by point of reference, Grosse Pointe Theater had 15,000 patrons in what they considered a banner year. GPSO has a fraction of that with a total revenue, according to their 990 for 2018, of $53,000, including donations in 2018. Now, while I appreciate these community endeavors, it's completely unrealistic to expect tens of thousands in the area to suddenly discover an abiding love for community theater and classical music, and to sustain that love year over year over year for the foreseeable future. It's no secret that the War Memorial, despite its diversity of programming, faces financial challenges like other facilities of its kind. This isn't Field of Dreams. People aren't going to magically appear just because the building's here. There must be a plan to attract people, and so far all we've seen is wishful thinking. So please tell me, what will be different about the Schaap Manoogian Center? Where are the other literally tens of thousands of patrons coming from? Thank you.
Jaime Rae, I'll have you answer this question.
Thank you. As we described in our previous presentations, the 50,000 number came from an estimated 180 nights of programming with approximately 250 attendees per night. And that is on the conservative side. What you see so far is a commitment from the Grosse Pointe Theater and the Grosse Pointe Symphony Orchestra, which are the only two organizations that we have memos of understanding with. Until we have approval from the city through Planning Commission, we're unable to proceed with the additional nonprofits that will fill the remaining calendar. In regard to the economic impact, that is accurate. We did use the calculator, which is exactly what that Americans for the Arts calculator is used for. And we will generate additional information to validate that number. We have been at many presentations throughout the community answering this same question over and over again, just to repeat for everyone that may not have been on one of the other calls. We have presented to the Grosse Pointe Rotary on July 8th. We have presented to the Grosse Pointe City Council on July 13th. Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce, 2 sessions on July 16th. Grosse Pointe Theater, 2 sessions on July 20th and July 21st. The Grosse Pointe Board of Realtors on July 27th, and Jefferson East on August 4th. And then tonight, and we still have several more presentations that we'll be making for community engagement. Each time we make a presentation, we get an inquiry about partnering with further organizations to fill that calendar. So it's a bit premature to put together exactly what those numbers are coming to for the 50,000, but we feel very confident that with the business plan that has been created, I know there has been quite a bit of chatter about the lack of a business plan. We do have a business plan. It is going to be presented in a format to Planning Commission, and there is also an annual operating budget that will be presented to the Planning Commission. So some of those questions that have been reoccurring, hopefully we won't get the same questions over tonight, so we can make way for new questions.
Thank you, Jaime Rae. Leah, next question on the queue.
Okay, Mary, you will be next. Please go ahead, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And Mary, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, Mary.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
She said to unmute myself, so. Well, first of all, I have to say, I can't even wrap my head around a 100-person limit, and you knew this in advance, and you didn't upgrade Zoom and or announce to the public that only 100 people could be on here. It just defies description. You've invited people to submit their questions to you. If they can't get on to ask, that's very nice, but when will those questions be answered and posted? Before the Planning Commission? I doubt it. When will this recording be posted for those people who can't get on? The other concern I have is at the beginning of this, the mayor or somebody suggested it may go a little after 8:30. Given the opening filibuster of about a half hour, any kind of a hard stop anywhere near 8:30 if all the questions aren't answered is really unacceptable. You know, many of us on this call have been at meetings either in person or on Zoom that have lasted far into the evening, council meetings, hearing out the mayor, the manager, and the council. And Mr. Denner and Seisland, you don't seem to want to grant us the same courtesy. But here's my question. My question is to you, and I guess the city attorney is not on this, so one of you all have to answer. Why exactly is this not a meeting covered by the Open Meetings Act when it has been set up by the city and it appears that there is a quorum of council members on this event? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. To answer a couple of your questions, yes, this meeting will be put on the city website. We'll have that available tomorrow. In regards to the amount of people, you know, we certainly did not anticipate, which is actually a great thing, to see this amount of feedback. You know, the residents are certainly wanting to seek their answers. I'll certainly do everything I can to provide those answers before Planning Commission and City Council to the best of my abilities. So I appreciate that. In regards to, I'm trying to look through all the names. I'm not sure, but you may be right that there may be more council members instituting a quorum. At this time, this question came up before at a, I used to have outreach, or actually pre-COVID, I would have outreach meetings that I would be in attendance with the department head, and members of the city council would be there as well. And the question did come about that, you know, can they be a part of this? Yes, they certainly can. The mayor can be a part, and other council members can be a part of this discussion at the meeting. Leah, next question, please.
Thank you, Manager Seisland.
Oh, wait, Leah, I do have, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. We just got a beeper going. I do have the city attorney in the line, and he would like to answer that as well. Jake, are you available? Okay, well, we'll get back to that later. But Leah, next question, please.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, this is Jake Howlett, city attorney. Mary, I heard your question. And I did send an email around earlier to the council about why this meeting does not fit under the OMA. The OMA applies to a meeting for the government body. That's defined as not a city meeting or not something like a town hall discussion, but a meeting of a group like the city council, a committee, an authority, a commission, which this is not. The OMA also only applies to meetings where there's either going to be decisions or deliberations. The purpose of this meeting is not to decide anything. There's going to be no vote, obviously, nor is it to deliberate on what those decisions might be or how council members might vote. It's an information gathering, fact-finding, town hall meeting, and I did the research, and it pretty clearly does not fall under the OMA. And so that was the decision I had reached, and I think it's pretty clear that this is not a meeting covered by the statute of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you, Jake. Now that I know on your line too, if there's any question, I may call upon you. Leah, can you admit the next comment or question, please?
Yes, TB Clausen, you are next. And I will unmute you. And
when you're ready.
Okay. TB Clausen, I see you, but I see that you're not muted, that you're still muted. So I'm going to ask you to unmute one more time. Okay, I'm seeing you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello? We'll try again. Leah, can you do the next question, please?
Yes, I can. Iris Steinberg, you are next. Please go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can.
The FAQ put out by the city claims that the foundation paid over $600,000 for the second movie theater, but former city manager Dale Kraniak told the Grosse Pointe Times on June 17, 2015, that the foundation paid $500,000 and the city paid $250,000. Additionally, it should be noted that the original estimate for the theater was $450,000, but it wound up being $750,000. Why should we trust the information being put out by the city when these numbers varied so wildly? And who is in charge of vetting these numbers? And when can we see an actual independent accounting for the costs incurred by the city? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. The $450,000 was a reference I think it was in 2014, there were city council minutes that stated in there that the former city manager, Dale Kraniak, he had that there was a offer to donate $300,000 toward the construction of the Schaap Theater, with an additional $150,000 at the city to complete the project. Certainly that number compared to the actual number is a lot different. And so that's why I went ahead and looked with our finance director to look at our actual costs of this project. And as you quoted in the paper, it seems that he did the same as well, but maybe didn't have the exact numbers at the time. And I'll repeat those again, the actual costs for the theater. They were $773,673.92. The foundation, the Schaaps, paid $671,340.03, and the city paid $104,516.51. And this portion of the city cost was offset by the ticket revenues for 2 years. Leah, next question, please.
Thank you. I'm going to have TB Clausen try again. So I'm going to ask you to unmute again. Okay, City Manager Seisman, I'm going to move on to the next person. Oh, wait, TB Clausen, I see that you're unmuted. Can you try to say something for me?
We'll try again, Leah. Let's go
Okay,
to the next
so the
question.
next person in the queue is Ms. Ame Fluitt, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. And please go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thanks for finally having the public forum. I hope that it will be useful to everyone. I want to join the people who have stated that it's unacceptable that people are being bumped off of this forum, that we didn't make allowances for more than 100 people to be here. I know that's a large turnout. It's certainly larger than we usually have at a city hall meeting, but we're at a point now, we've got non-residents on, and a lot of residents who actually are not able to access this forum. Turning in an email question is not going to be the same thing as being able to ask it publicly. So I'm really disappointed in that. With that said, I have a two-part question. The first part is, and please don't forget to come back to me for the second part. The first part is, the 100% donor-funded narrative persists despite the facts to the contrary. Why aren't GPP taxpayers receiving some kind of defined benefit just for them, since they're the only people in the local area who will be making significant contributions to the expenses of this facility?
Jaime Rae, I think that's a question for you.
Yes, thank you. The $25 million capital campaign and the $10 million endowment is 100% donor funded. There is no funds coming for the construction of the Schaap Center. In regards to benefits to the city, we have been talking internally about what those potential benefits could be to Grosse Pointe Park residents. We have some ideas that we're talking about and are going to engage several of the community members and how we could incorporate that into our plan. There have been some ideas in the business plan that are being vetted. We have heard you loud and clear. I am a Grosse Pointe Park resident myself, and we will take that into consideration as we move forward through the approval process to ensure that the Grosse Pointe Park residents feel as though they are benefiting from the in-kind services that are provided by the city. But just to be clear, the construction of the $25 million Schaap Center is 100% donor funded, and the endowment, which is 50% committed so far, and just so long as everyone that hasn't been on a call previously, the total budget for fundraising goal is $35 million, of which $25 million has been committed to.
Okay, am I still on for the second part?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. The second part of my question is, are there blueprints already? And if so, can either Jaime Rae or the city address whether this facility is going to include any kind of VIP benefits, like the private balcony seats that are in the movie theater that are only reserved for the Schaap family and public officials?
I'll answer on behalf of the city and then Jaime Rae. The only plans that the city has at this time is the same ones that are out publicly on the Planning Commission agenda. Those are the official plans we have at this time, and then I'll let Jaime Rae speak on the other question.
Could you repeat the question in relation to what you're at? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sure. So in the movie theater, which as we have already discussed was donor funded, but was also financed partially by taxpayers, there are private balcony seats for the Schaap family that are also for the use of city council members. So I'm asking if there will be anything similar to that in this facility.
I am not aware of any reserve seating for donors at this time. I don't believe that the detail has been put out for any donor restricted seating. I know that the Grosse Pointe Theater has season ticket holders quite successfully, but I am not aware of any reserve seating. I could certainly get that answer back to you, Jaime.
Thank you.
Leah, next question, please.
Diana Kolar, you are next. If you would like to go ahead, please.
Thank you. It's Diana Kohler. I've been a resident of Grosse Pointe Park since 1983 and a professional fundraiser, dear God, since 1975. So I have some questions for Jaime about the fundraising that's being done among the Grosse Pointe Theater. I understand that there's a fundraising effort going on there. And I am interested in her giving us an update on how much money they've raised through that group, the number of gifts they've raised, the largest gift to date, and how many more prospects do you have to go in that campaign, Jaime?
So I can answer a little. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can answer a little bit about the Grosse Pointe Theater. We have members that we are working with on the fundraising team. Before they have had commitments of up to $2 million that I'm aware of toward the $9 million goal of capital contributions. So like I stated before, we have 16 million committed toward the 25, and they had verbal commitments of approximately 2 million. And they have to circle back the wagons because there has been some time that has lapsed, and there are a lot of donors in the pipeline for Grosse Pointe Theater. But until there is city planning approval, they're in a bit of a holding pattern, but they are very confident that they're going to be successful in raising money on behalf of the Schaap Center. Again, I don't represent the Grosse Pointe Theater. I represent the Schaap Center. But I think this gives you an idea of their commitment and what they have in the pipeline so far.
Actually, that isn't really very specific, but that seems to be a theme.
Well, you know, what I could do is I could connect you with the leadership at the Grosse Pointe Theater, and I'm certain that they would be happy to answer any of those questions. They were kind enough to send a letter, a 4-page letter to the loyal community, which is on their website, and clarified a bit of information in regard to their commitment to the Schaap Center. I encourage everybody to take a look at the Grosse Pointe Theater website to see those details, and also to look at some of the financials that they provided. They provided additional financials with their 990s and annual report for what was their most successful year that was not covered in some of the questions that have been presented previously. So anyone that is really interested in looking more further into the inner workings of the Grosse Pointe Theater, which is going to have its home at the Schaap Center, which is quite remarkable. They're in need of a home. I think everybody knows that. But there's certainly a great amount of detail, and I know that the leadership at Grosse Pointe Theater would be thrilled to speak with anybody that has inquiries.
I'll reach out to you afterwards, Jaime, and you can connect me directly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leah, next question in the queue, please.
Okay, the next person is username Laxdad. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry about my screen name. This is Andrew. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, great. Yeah, I grew up within about 2 blocks of the proposed area, and having spent my entire life in Grosse Pointe Park, I've got not so much a question, more of a comment, because one of the things that Grosse Pointe Park and most of the Grosse Pointes have really been slammed on over the years is we're always considered, you know, a very, very exclusive community as opposed to an inclusive community. And I think, you know, at least over the last several years, we've been trying to make great strides to be more inclusive and be more cognizant of working with the city and other surrounding areas to provide some access to some of the things that we have. And in looking at and reading and researching all this, you know, the list of potential users of this system of the center, including the Mosaic Youth Theater of Detroit, I can't think of a better way to encourage people to come into the area, and for it to be fully endowed, you know, as we've been told, that is a fantastic thing. One of the things historically, having grown up within that corridor, the Esquire Theater that was the last prior to the theaters being built at the park, you know, that closed. One of the main reasons was because residents felt there were too many people from Detroit coming to use it, and that was something that looked really, really negatively on the community. This is a great opportunity where you've got, you know, some very generous philanthropists that are putting up the money to build and erect this, and then also endow it, and give the community an ability to reach out to a number of organizations that similar to the Grosse Pointe Theater, they don't have homes, and if you can give them a way to do that, and I know that in one of the presentations there's a list of some of the stuff, but you've also got Cabaret 313 and a number of other places that would love an opportunity to use this. But that's my general question. I don't understand why all the negativity when there's such a great opportunity for us to actually, you know, try to bring more diversity into our community, as opposed to, again, looking like we're going to close off or possibly close off an opportunity that would bring in people from outside Grosse Pointe. It kind of sends the wrong message to me, but that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Leah, next question, please.
Okay, the next username is May Eve Susan. Going to ask you to unmute yourself.
One thing I do want to ask residents real quick, and those, if you could please state your name and your city of residence when you're asking your question too. I apologize for not clarifying that in the beginning.
Okay, May Eve Susan, if you would like to go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Susan Dundon. I live on Harvard in Grosse Pointe Park, and I have done some research on some of the you know, commitments made by the city of Grosse Pointe Park for the Arts Center, and you know, some of them were included, I think, in the documents that you provided in the FAQ, and some others also brought up in this conversation. But I would definitely beg to differ that these contributions should be considered in kind, especially given that, you know, there are thousands already billed in legal fees related to this project, that we may end up, you know, being responsible for the demo of the DPW facility and any remediation of environmental issues, that the bus turnaround for DDOT has already cost $100,000. The landscaping is upwards of $60,000. The new proposed parking lot at the library could cost $75,000 to $100,000 and couldn't actually be a worse use for that space. This DDA has committed $75,000 a year, and probably the most egregious being the $2.1 million in land that the taxpayers paid, that were then subsequently sold for $300,000. So, you know, those contributions that are already on the books are far from in kind. And I would like, as a resident, to better understand, fully understand the breakout and total costs of services to the center that have already been committed, and importantly, what guarantees that we as taxpayers have against even more services being provided for the center from city resources. So that's a question for the city. The question, I think, related to Jaime Rae is why the URIF, or the subsequent nonprofit organization that will take over the operations, can't pay for its own property maintenance, snow removal, landscaping, and security. Why is that? You know, why can't that be part of the operating budget that's paid by the revenues and the donors and everything else? So those are my questions.
Thank you for those questions. From the city perspective, yes, there is some commitments that have been made in the MOUs between the city of Grosse Pointe Park, the Urban Renewal Initiative, and some of them even the city of Detroit. And I would certainly, you know, look to your calendar, as we'll announce further that they're still in review and negotiation for further services of the DDA. There will be an MOU between those entities, so I would certainly encourage the public to review those, as that MOU, once it is brought about, would be posted online. Then I'll turn the other question over to Jaime Rae.
That answer in regard to the in-kind services was an agreement that was made previous to my joining the team on June 1st. So thank you.
Okay,
So does that-
next question, please. Oh, sorry.
I
go
don't
ahead.
think that was, yeah, I'm not sure that was an answer, because the question was why not, why can't the URF, why isn't this built, these costs for property maintenance, snow removal, landscaping, security built into the, why aren't they being paid like many other businesses by the organization itself? It's not an answer to the question to know that agreement was made before the current fundraising team was in place. Why aren't those included? Why are they to be paid by the taxpayers here?
Just to clarify, I'm not a member of the fundraising team. I'm the spokesperson, and I don't play a role in the fundraising for the project. I don't have previous knowledge of how that came about. I would happy to talk with the team about how that decision was made and why it was decided, but I can't give you that answer.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Mr. Dan Palmer, you will be next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And then if you could please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep. Okay. Hi, I'm Dan Palmer. I'm on the Bedford street here in Grosse Pointe Park. I'd like to start by saying almost nobody I've spoken with has been against the Arts Center. Most everyone likes the concept. That's all it is to the citizens right now, based on the information that was provided, a concept. No specifics have been relayed other than some broad comments in an FAQ. The pushback has been against the lack of transparency, clear conflicts of interest almost everywhere you look, and an overall impression of the project being railroaded through city government. There should be no rush on this. It has been vacant for some time. There are many, many unknowns in the coming months. All these signs point to taking the time to do it right, communicate with the community, and build a center that would truly be the jewel it is being claimed to be, and not an anchor on the city. The broad number of 1.7 million comes from that calculator on the website and provides a fairly low level of rigor. That number should be your finger in the wind about whether further analysis is warranted. The only variables input into that calculator are city size, spending of the nonprofit, and an annual audience attendance. A few weeks ago, I tried to hit the 1.7 million in impact on that calculator. And I had to assume the center would sell out a 500-seat theater 152 nights a year. The 180 nights of 250 people in attendance mentioned earlier requires some bold assumptions about the spending of the nonprofit to make up that gap. Additionally, this 1.7 million would have an impact broader than on Grosse Pointe Park, who is the entity taking on the financial risk in terms of cities. I would echo the earlier comments about disclosing the operating budget and business plan to the public. My questions: what decisions are remaining in the process for the city, and what is the downside risk the city is exposed to? Are there benefits in discussion that would make it more of a community center, such as artists and residents, classes, etc.? And finally, what is the result if the 100% donor-funded amount is unsuccessful?
So I'll answer on the city behalf of the process moving forward. On Wednesday, there will be a planning commission meeting. The developers of the Schaap Center informed the city that that they would they had all the blueprints. The city reviewed them. We had plan review by our engineer OHM advisors, and so we're holding that meeting on Wednesday. One of those discussion points is the site plan review. And there will actually be a public comment period before that for residents to provide their feedback and or comments. after that, if the project were to be approved and or from Planning Commission and or there is a variance required, that then would go to the City Council. Jaime, I'll let you answer. I think there was a couple other questions that'd be more in your forte.
Thank you. The Schaap Center operating budget is being presented to Planning Commission and will be shared, and more details in regard to opportunities to further engage the community. I want to point out that both the Grosse Pointe Theater and the Grosse Pointe Symphony Orchestra have really robust youth programs, educational programs, free workshops that have been incredible to the community and will continue to. Outside of those two organizations that have made a commitment to participate in the Schaap Center, there are discussions for other opportunities to engage the arts community, both performing and visual, so that we can continue to support, just as URIF and the Schaap family and Manugians have done throughout the community.
Thank you. Leah, next question, please.
Can you answer the last question about what the result is if the 100% donor funded amount is unsuccessful? Thank you for your other answers, by the way.
We anticipate that there's going to be full success in fundraising. I too am a professional fundraiser for many years. Like I stated before, I am not actively fundraising for the Schaap Center. I was brought in as a spokesperson to help engage the community. But based on the strategic plan and the really talented, seasoned professionals that have been engaged by the foundation, I see no reason why they cannot reach their goal of 25 million to raise, especially since they have already reached 16 before even Planning Commission.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Kelly Cullen, you will be next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. If you would like to go ahead, please. Can you try speaking again for us, please? We can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next person in the queue. Mr. Rasmussen, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please. Okay, I can see you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
I'm Kevin Rasmussen, 1100 block of Maryland. Two things. I'm only on this by chance, as I was dropped off and there's a 100 limit, and at someone else's expense, I'm able to make a comment. My comment is, I think regardless of how much parking is available for the Arts Center, people will still seek out a shady spot on a residential street. I'll be brief, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, next comment or question, please.
Okay, the next person on my queue list is Miss Michelle Martin. If you would like to, oh, sorry, I muted you. Please unmute yourself again, and please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Michelle Martin. I live on Harvard in the park, and I've lived here for a number of years. First, before my question, I just want to say if Jaime Rae can answer the question of Susan Dundon about the ongoing maintenance costs for the center being in the budget, maybe the mayor should answer the question or Nick should answer the question, because it's just unacceptable to say that you just joined and you don't know the answer. The other thing that's unacceptable is having a public forum where you only allow 100 residents to be on. I was on once and got bumped off, and I couldn't get back on for a while. I definitely agree that you need to rerun the forum in a way that allows all of the residents to be able to contribute and have a say. That's part of the problem with the city. And then finally, my question is, I want to know what guarantees that the city will require against construction cost overruns and then later against operation shortfalls that will leave citizen taxpayers like myself on the hook?
I'll go ahead and start. Again, I am a spokesperson. I'm not on the board of URF. And so I cannot make that call or.
That's fine. You don't have to make the call. Maybe the mayor should make the call or Nick should answer the question.
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished, but thank you.
And so thank you for your question. So I believe some of the questions were in discussions of, I believe, the commitment that has been made of funds by the DDA and or what would be on the hook for the city. That's something that has been communicated in the DDA minutes, that the DDA would provide support funding of $75,000 to the project. That was a previous decision of, or actually a previous commitment. However, I would certainly encourage you to voice those concerns as well to the city, myself right here, and at the future DDA meeting that'll have the MOU. And I certainly anticipate that Jaime Rae, as she has said, that in her in the URIF's or Schaap Center's Planning Commission meeting and the City Council, that they will have a detailed budget for the residents to review. Thank you.
What protection do we have against cost overruns and taxpayers being on the hook for the funds that are needed to run the Art Center?
You know, I don't have an exact answer at this time for you, but I can certainly see what I can do to provide further clarification for that.
That's unacceptable to me.
Well, and if I could just jump in on the answer there, this is not the city's responsibility for construction because they're not building the building.
Well, then it shouldn't be the taxpayers' responsibility to pay for it if there's cost overruns.
The taxpayers will not pay for any tax or for any overruns for construction or operating expenses. The taxpayers are not responsible for any funding of the construction. So there's no
that in writing that no taxpayer funds will be spent on this, because you've already spent, I mean, the loss of $2 million from the properties that you acquired and then sold for $300,000 for this property. So that's already taxpayer dollars that have gone into this.
And those were decisions made by the City Council at that time in 2012.
So going forward, what commitment do we have that taxpayers won't be on the hook for any cost related to this art center that we weren't asked if we want or wanted to pay money towards?
I guess you would have to clarify the exact costs that you are looking towards, that they may have, if it's something on behalf of the city. That would further help me be able to answer your question at this time. So
operation costs. What operation?
That would be that. I'm sorry. If you're discussing operational costs, some of that is certainly hard on the Schaap Center team. And so I know I'd really like to go back and forth, Michelle, and I appreciate your comments, but I certainly do want to provide other residents time to be able to ask questions. And if you have any follow-up, I would please encourage you to please email myself, and I'll ask Jaime Rae Turnbull on this meeting as well to share the email to have questions directed exactly to her.
Well, I certainly hope you're going to hold another forum for the other citizens that couldn't get on this one with the 100-person limit. Can you commit to doing that today?
We'll certainly have it in consideration. Thank you.
I would certainly make myself available for any future calls. And we understand that there's a concern. No one meant to eliminate any opportunity for discussion. I have made myself available. My email is jrt@jrturnbull.com. And I'd be happy to have a phone call with anybody, email exchange. I have responded to every email that has come my way since I joined the team.
And for those on the call, I would please refrain from any comments and or laughter. while residents are asking questions and or myself or Jaime Rae Turnbull are talking. Thank you. Leah, could you please do the next public comment or question?
Yes, I can. Mr. Kolar, you will be next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Great.
And if you could please go ahead. Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. So thanks for finally hosting this, but let me also jump in here and note my disappointment on how this has been limited here. I've got my phone just blowing up with people that can't get in here. And it's Tim Kohler. I have no relation to Diane Kohler because I'm not as smart, as intelligent as she is. She asked wonderful questions, so thank you for that, Diane. City Manager Seisland, not foreseeing that there would be over 100 people that would be interested in this here. To me, I mean, that just shows a lack of understanding of the community that you serve here. This has been an issue and a request that's been made for well over a year, and I don't think anybody in this community thought there would be less than 100 people attending tonight. So it really is that simple. Jaime Rae, the reason that you keep hearing the same questions in all your presentations is that you nor the UIRF have been able to provide answers to any of them. And tonight, as we are seeing with everyone's follow-up questions to their original question, neither you nor Nick nor Mayor can provide answers to any of our continued questions that we ask. For example, you just represented that the fundraising has been successful, thus far generating $16 million. But all of that money right there is from the commitments from the donors, from the Schaaps and Manugians, plus an anonymous donor for $1 million. That's it. This isn't some community-wide effort. This isn't thousands of people contributing $10. These are 2 individuals plus an anonymous donor. My question, though, is a follow-up to your other comment, Jaime Rae, about an operating budget and a business plan. And you stated that the operating budget and business plan will be presented on Wednesday night, less than 48 hours from now, to the Planning Commission. So on Wednesday, the Planning Commission will be presented with these critical details, but will then have to vote on what is presented at that same meeting. So does that mean that the operating plan and the business plans are currently not available? And if they are available, why can the operating budget and business plan not be shared with the Planning Commission in advance of their meeting taking place in less than 48 hours? Thank you.
So I'll make one quick statement, and thank you, Tim, for that question. I appreciate it. And to be honest with you, I did not expect that there would be 100 people. And if I do this again, which we may end up doing, I probably will create a Facebook event just to ensure to make sure to see the interest and or, you create an invite if you're interested going, not going. The city at its capacity when we purchased Zoom, we anticipated, okay, 100 people, but obviously seeing the feedback here tonight, we may look into seeing if we can expand that capacity for future events. I'll turn the other parts of that question towards Jaime Rae, please.
The operating budget is going to be sent to the Planning Commission in advance if it hasn't already been submitted to the Planning Commission. And I do believe that the questions that I have been asked, I have answered. I don't think that there have been any questions with the exception of what a Grosse Pointe Park resident will get in return for the in-kind services that are being provided. We do want to get more engagement from the residents of Grosse Pointe Park. I have personally spoken to many members of the Grosse Pointe Park community and will continue to do that, including from many businesses that are going to benefit economically from a facility like this at this location. And as far as the fundraising strategy, there are many individuals that are willing to donate to Schaap Center in a facility like this, but it is critical for us to get the support of Planning Commission before we can go and engage and reach those donors.
Thank you. Next question, please, Leah.
Okay, Steve, you will be next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next person. Mr. Butler, you will be next. Oh, wait, sorry. Steve, I see that you're unmuted. Can you speak for me, please?
Hi, how are you?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
We can hear you, Steve.
Okay, great. This is Steve Wildern. I reside in Grosse Pointe Park. I just wanted to make a comment and a question. The comment is that I think it would be improper for this to go before the Planning Commission on Wednesday without a town hall that's open to all the Grosse Pointe Park residents. My question is for Jaime Rae. Arts councils typically do a lot of things. They promote all of the arts in the community, including individual artists. They sometimes facilitate re-granting, have educational opportunities, opportunities for involvement with community members and outreach. Apart from operating this venue for the two community arts groups, what is the written mission statement of the Grosse Pointe Park Council for the Arts?
So the Grosse Pointe Council for the Arts is currently being created. I am not a spokesperson for that council. I'm a spokesperson for the Schaap Center. And that mission statement and the operating documents are underway.
Okay, but I do understand that the Arts Council will be operating the venue. Is that correct?
That is correct. And they will also be doing more than just operating the venue. They will be, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I did not create, nor am I responsible for creating a business plan or a mission statement for the Council for the Arts. But it is anticipated that they will do more outreach, education for performing and visual arts throughout the community, not just in Grosse Pointe, but attracting the surrounding areas as well. And so I don't have the specific mission and vision statement for that organization as it is being created now.
Well, thank you for your answer, and I'm sure we all look forward to seeing those plans.
Thank you.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay. Mr. Kevin Butler, you will be next. Going to ask you to unmute yourself. Okay, I see that you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Kevin Butler. I'm on the 1000 block of Devonshire. I want to thank you guys for hosting the town hall. I know there's a lot of questions, and obviously I think we all have little answers that we want to get to, which I know will come in due time. One of the things I think I look forward, instead of looking back, I want to look forward as a resident of the community and someone who's raising kids in the community. I'm very eager to see other services. I think we've been very happy with all the new restaurants and entertainment in our community versus some of the other Grosse Pointes. And I think to sustain that, something like an arts center would be very welcomed. And looking into the future of bringing business to make sure that our restaurants are sustained, I think it would be a great partnership to have a center like this. Jaime Rae, a question for you. I guess, are there any other art centers, I guess, besides maybe, like a Grosse Pointe North theater that has some very good, has the right, conditions in place for audiences. But is there any other theaters in the Grosse Pointes, to your knowledge, that have the features and benefits that the Schaap Center will have?
I don't think that we are in competition, if that's what you're asking, and that we are really providing a venue that is lacking in our community because so many performing groups don't have a home and they're scrambling to go to different venues. There are certainly community centers, but just to be clear, this is a performing and visual arts center with the ability to exhibit wonderful community artwork in our community gallery and in the Manugian gallery that is in the lobby and pre-function space. But as far as a venue like this that is its own 501c3 in Grosse Pointe, not familiar.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Leah Greenwall, you will be next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And if you could please go ahead.
Hello, Leah Greenwell, Grosse Pointe Park. I want to echo what some other residents have said about planning for a really robust and engaged civic process. We shouldn't be surprised by it. I think our city has turned out in larger and larger numbers, and that needs to be part of our planning and a goal for how we conduct business in the city. One comment and then a question. With the goal to provide world-class arts experiences, which I saw in a previous presentation for the Schaap Center, it seems like this process has been run backwards. It's a building with things to fill it, some of which have been determined and some of which haven't, then a mission-driven arts organization that figures out what physical location really helps it realize its mission and benefit that mission. So I think we need to slow down and get this process right. And it seems like it's in everyone's interest to do that. I'm trying to figure out what would be harmed by having this process slow down and go through the right channels and make sure the input of the community that it's going to reside in would be heard. My question for tonight for Mayor Denner and City Manager Seisland is, what will you do to guarantee that no one involved in giving any approval or in voting for this project is benefiting in any way, including but not limited to financially?
So that's a great question, Leah, and thank you for that. So recently, the City Council at its last meeting actually just passed an ethics ordinance, which does address certain things like this. If there is any sort of conflict of interest among our council members, including myself, that the city will have to actually fill out and disclose that information. But at this time, if there's any actual financial conflicts, the process at that time would be for that council member and/or if there was myself to contact the city attorney and certainly vet and see if there is a conflict at this time. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick follow-up, Nick?
Real quick.
With regard to
others.
Mayor Denner, yeah, with regards to Mayor Denner's involvement on the URF board, has there been any conflict of interest disclosed? I know that was discussed at the meeting somewhat, but was there a conclusion regarding if that was improper or in any way binding the city too much to this project?
I believe at this time, at that time, the mayor announced publicly at a city council meeting that he had resigned from the Urban Renewal Initiative. And I believe that the city attorney as well at that time vetted that there was no perceived conflict at that time. That was in, I believe, October or November of 2019. Next question, please.
Okay, really quick before I call the next question, I just want to reiterate for everyone on the line that we are going to go through everyone new first, and then if we are still in a good place, we will call on people who have already asked a question. I know that I see some hands that have already been up previously, so just know that you are on my list, but I'm calling new people first. Amy Greenroyd, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
And please go ahead.
Hi, this is Amy Greenroyd. I reside in Grosse Pointe Park. We're actually on the 1000 block of Maryland, so very close to the proposed project. Some background, we moved here in 2017. I am the mother of 3 kids under 5, so the place to raise a family is part of why we are here. I was very excited to hear about the proposal of a childcare center directly across the street from where I live. That is what originally got me involved in participating in city council meetings, and I was very disappointed in how that was handled by our city. And so in response to today's town hall, I'm also very disappointed that, as has already been said, the process and procedure is lacking. And I do hope to see that improved as we go forward. My question for this evening is about any other requests for proposals for this land. I believe it was somewhat addressed in the FAQ that was provided recently on the city's website, so thank you for that. But I'm not sure any of those details. It mentions Tim Hortons, extended learning facility, some senior condos that the city council wasn't interested in pursuing at the time. So when was that? It is, I'm assuming around 2012. It's now 8 years later. And so I guess my question is to address the timing of that, and why is it not too late to consider an alternative vision for our gateway from Detroit into the points? One that takes into account community needs and input, et cetera. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So it's a two-part question. I'll certainly do my best, Amy, to answer those for you. You know, I was not here at this time, and so part of that was going back into history with council members and the former city manager. I do not believe there was an RFP done for advertising this land. I am unclear if there was even a for sale sign up, but I do know that there were interested parties that did approach the city at that deck bar location and over at the Jefferson and Maryland property previous to you know, being sold to Mr. Schaap. And to reiterate those again, some of those where there was a proposed Tim Hortons, a Wayne State extended learning facility for the School of Mortuary Science, and 2 senior condo complexes. Regarding the area of land around, it would be in front of St. Ambrose and near DPW. So currently right now, the Urban Renewal Initiative and Dr. Schaap, they would own the land at the corner of Maryland and Jefferson, the land closest to St. Ambrose, the former DDOT lot, the former Ferrioli building, and as part of the memorandum of understanding that was signed by the City Council in October of 2019, as part of that agreement, there was as soon as fundraising has been finalized, the city would transfer those properties, which is half of the DPW, which is in Detroit, half of which is in the park, and the other is the former deck bar location. And so that, I hope that will clarify a couple of your questions for you. And so go from there. Leah, next question, please.
Real quick before we move on, I apologize,
okay.
but you said that there wasn't a request for a proposal. Why wasn't it listed for sale or anything if it's such a prime plot of real estate? It seems like it was basically given as opposed to really finding something to. Okay.
Oh, no problem. Unfortunately, I really couldn't tell you. That was the decision of the previous administration. So, Leah, next question, please.
Nick, if you like, I can talk a little bit about the history.
Mayor Donner, go ahead.
I'll just talk a little bit about the history to try and fill in. I was around for at least some of it. But I wasn't directly involved in the marketing of the property, but I do know that the city manager at the time did engage a commercial real estate agent to shop it around and to look for opportunities. So I know there was a proactive effort that resulted in the proposals that Nick outlined. The other part of the question I think is related. Well, it's 2012 is 8 years ago. The other property that Urban Renewal and the Schaaps now own, in addition to that property that was sold in 2012, include the formerly owned by the city of Detroit DDOT bus turnaround. And it took many years of negotiation actually to complete that acquisition in order to make the site a more complete site. So that was an issue over a period of time, which was ultimately resolved with the assembly of the property from Maryland to Weyburn, which is now owned by Urban Renewal and the Schaaps. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question, please, Leah.
Okay, Susan S., you will be next. If you will please go ahead.
Okay, I appreciate having the ability to ask this question. I know this has been asked for a long time. Based on the answers so far, I don't have a lot of confidence that I'll have specific answers. I could spend time re-asking questions individuals already asked, but I may get non-answers, like what happens if or when your campaign is not successful. It will be is not an answer. You note the majority of individuals on this call have been from individuals who believe there has not been transparency in this project, with the exception of Jaime Rae's brother-in-law. That should be sending you a clear message on how residents feel about your work here. Every answer is trust us, we'll have a plan, but no one seems to see those plans until the day they are voted on, and there's finger pointing back and forth. I also find it odd but predictable that the principals on this project aren't here to answer specifics. I love theater, I love the arts, I've been to numerous Grosse Pointe theater performances, but that does not mean that this theater, as it is planned right now, is a good idea or has been done in good faith with city resources. You are doing this backwards. My question is, given Grosse Pointe Theater and the orchestra are not park-specific organizations, why are contributions not being sought from other of our Grosse Pointe jurisdictions?
Jamie?
I will answer the question in regard to the campaign. If it's not successful, there is no project. We cannot start construction unless we have full funding. If I haven't made that clear, 25 million to be raised, 16 has been raised so far. Land does not transfer until we've reached the total goal.
Next question, please, Leah.
You didn't answer my last question, if that's okay. The question on whether or not, since Grosse Pointe Theater and the orchestra are not Grosse Pointe Park organizations, why or if contributions will be asked for by our other Grosse Pointe jurisdictions for this maintenance of this theater.
Nick, do you want to take that one? We are in the nonprofit business of asking for philanthropic dollars. There's no anticipated ask for local government and municipal support.
I can address that a little bit.
I must have missed it. Could you please restate your question again? I apologize there. I thought that was more towards Jaime Rae, but I must have been. If you could restate it, please.
Yes. So the folks that keep being talked about using this property or center are places like Grosse Pointe Theater and the orchestra. But given those are Grosse Pointe wide organizations and not specific to Grosse Pointe Park, I wondered why other of the Grosse Pointes have not been asked to contribute to the large amount of money that Grosse Pointe Park is putting into this operation.
I could not tell you from a history but I'll ask the mayor if he has any knowledge of why that is.
All I can say is that I can comment a little bit. Because the development is within our Downtown Development Authority district and within Grosse Pointe Park, the participation of our DDA and some of the intent for the in-kind services support going forward are really because it was the judgment of those organizations to support an important positive development within our borders. And I think that in my own view is that, in comparison with the costs as a whole, going forward, the costs are relatively modest for the city. If you go historically, the costs are mostly around, the larger costs are around assembling property for future development, which is a common function of a city and its DDA. Okay, thank you.
Leah, next question, please.
Mr. Porter, you will be next. If you would like to go ahead, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Ron Porter. I live at 781 Pemberton. I've lived south of Jefferson continuously since 1984. Before that, in the late 70s and early 80s, I lived at the corner of Beaconsfield and St. Paul. I have numerous disagreements with things that the mayor has said, but I would like to point out that his recounting of the desperate, crime-ridden situation in Grosse Pointe Park in 1982 is just patently false. That was not this community in 1982. It wasn't in 1984, and it wasn't in 1978. He's revising history to make himself look good. There isn't anything about this project that is good. It is a terrible use of valuable land on East Jefferson and Mack Avenue. We are taking our most valuable property off the tax rolls permanently to give it to a couple of big donors who will be impressed by having their name on a big project. It's an awful use of our land. It's terrible city planning, and we simply don't need it. We are doing more projects to encourage our residents to live in a bubble and never venture out for anything. We have a world-class museum and a world-class symphony. We have world-class theater all outside our borders. We don't need to spend tens of millions of dollars to build this vanity project. My specific question is, we've heard a lot about these land transactions that occurred with Mr. Kraniak and Mr. Denner, who at least had blatant conflicts of interest. They were essentially selling land to organizations that they represented. So they were on both sides of the transaction, and it cost the city close to $2 million. My question to the city attorney and to Mr. Seisland is whether he will retain independent counsel to see if there are civil or criminal remedies that need to be pursued to make the citizens of Grosse Pointe Park whole as a result of these unethical and perhaps criminal transactions. Thank you.
So I'll make a quick statement real quick, and then I believe the city attorney is on the line as well. Back again in, I believe it was October of 2019, the mayor had resigned from the Urban Renewal Initiative Foundation, and the former city manager, DDA director, was on that foundation as well. And at the time, the city attorney had advised that there was no conflict. And with that said, I'll let the current city attorney, Mr. Jake Howlett, comment further.
I think to just address your specific question, no, there are no plans to retain independent counsel or to launch or investigate a criminal investigation.
That's
Nick,
just what I expected.
Nick, can I make one more comment?
And I would point out that when Mr. Denner resigned from the various conflicting organizations, it was after at least 10 years of land transfers that were conducted without any independent supervision and were extremely advantageous to organizations that he represented.
Yeah.
Flagrant conflict of interest.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the issue about conflict of interest as it relates to land transfers that occurred in the past. I want to make it clear that in 2012, when the city sold the property at Jefferson and Maryland to the Schaaps, that I was on council, but I was not on the Urban Renewal Initiative Foundation board. I was not invited to participate in the board until I don't know the exact year, but it was after I was mayor, so I know that it was after 2015. And so the land transfers that you referred to happened when I was on council, but not involved with urban renewal. Thanks.
What about
Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Miss Melissa Lavasser, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute your line. And if you would like to go ahead, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say that all of my questions were answered, with the exception of, I'd like to know, for those of us who would wish to donate to this art center, how do we do that?
I can answer that.
Jaime Rae?
If you'd like, thank you for offering, and anyone else that would like to contribute, any contribution would be welcome, and I can connect you to the fundraising team. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, and we look forward to connecting.
Thank you, Jaime.
Leah, next question, please.
Mr. Sean Greenroyd, you are next. If you would please go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Sean Greenroyd. I'm Amy Greenroyd's husband. We have three beautiful kids. We're on the 1000 block of Maryland, and I just have a question regarding the URIF. So the URIF was founded by former Mayor Heenan and former manager Kraniak in 2012. Heenan served on the URIF board until 2016, and Kraniak served on the board until 2019. Mayor Denner served on the board from 2018 to 2019. All of them devoted city time and resources to this project and voted on or advanced the project to further it while serving on the URIF board. So how does this avoid the appearance of impropriety?
Mayor Denner, would you like to respond?
I can say that I was invited to the board so that the Urban Renewal had the benefit of the city's perspective in their deliberations. And that, as it was pointed out to me, that this was perceived by some as a conflict, although not an actual conflict per the advice of the city attorney. I resigned from the board so that going forward there'd be no question about it. So as you mentioned, my time on the board was relatively brief, and was initiated really to bring the voice. Originally, the concept was to bring the voice of the city to their deliberations. It was obviously only one vote on the board, but the timing of my resignation is accurate. It was in late 2019. Thanks. I think November, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Miss Amy Conti, you are next. Going to ask you to, okay, I see that you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Amy Conti and I live in the park. I also want to repeat the issue of capping this town hall at 100 people. If the city is offering my and everybody else's hard-earned tax dollars to maintain the performing arts property and hold this property exempt from property taxes, park residents are entitled to an opinion and a direct benefit. This proposal is going through city channels way too hastily. To give people some context of my position and question, I was denied in 2018 for a parking variance and use variance for the property located directly across the street of the proposed Performing Arts Center, located at 14950 East Jefferson. I was looking to provide a daycare center that would enroll up to 90 children ages 6 weeks to 5 years old, something of great need in our community. The city denied it based on concerns of parking and traffic. I'd like to understand why the city does not see an issue with parking and traffic of the Performing Arts Center, a project at least 5 times the scale and scope of my proposal. I would like to know why a traffic study has not been prepared. There will be a significant volume of vehicles at arrival and departure. This should be required for a project of this scale. Residents.
I think someone needs to tell Amy that we can't hear her.
Please, anyone else besides Amy to please refrain from commenting. Amy, I apologize. Can you rephrase your question? I honestly had a tough time hearing as well. Thank you.
I guess.
Leah, reset the timer for Amy.
I'll just start over. I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, hi, my name's Amy Conti. I live in the park. I also want to repeat the issue with capping this town hall at 100 people. If the city is offering my hard-earned taxes and others to maintain the Performing Arts Center property and hold this property exempt from property taxes, park residents are entitled to an opinion and a direct benefit. This proposal is going through city channels way too hastily. To give people some context of my position and questions, I was denied twice in 2018 for a parking variance and use variance for a property located directly across the street of the proposed Performing Arts Center, located at 14950 East Jefferson. I was looking to provide a childcare center that would enroll up to 90 children ages 6 weeks to 5 years old, something of great need in our community. The city denied it based on concerns with traffic and parking. I'd like to understand why the city does not see an issue with parking and traffic for the Performing Arts Center, a project of at least 5 times the scale and scope of my proposal. I would like to know why a traffic study has not been prepared. There will be a significant volume of vehicles at arrival and departure that should be required for a project of this scale. Residents in the vicinity should be concerned. This leads me to my last statement about parking. Information on the city's website indicates 605 parking stalls are needed, and only 15% of those parking stalls are provided on site. A recent plan showed utilizing adjacent properties for parking. I know for a fact that at least one of these adjacent commercial properties have not been approached about a shared parking agreement. This is required to use parking on private lot that you do not own. I also know from my own past experience that you will not be able to obtain a shared parking approval agreement with Bank of America. These are details that should be worked out prior to Planning Commission. Lastly, Nick, thank you for clarifying the process for the Performing Arts Center. I would like to know if the Performing Arts Center was required to file a use variance and parking variance, and if not, please explain why. A privately developed Performing Arts Center is not an approved use in Zoning District OS, the district in which this property is located in.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So to answer your question, so as I stated earlier, and you are correct, there was presentations by the Schaap Center team that certainly showed parking at about 600 available spaces. At this time, it is available on the city website under the Planning Commission for agenda for Wednesday. They have greatly reduced that parking to the required parking in OS1 under theater. I believe it's 5 seats per parking space. There's a chart in the zoning that it's there. And so they're presenting that in there. As well, the Schaap Center team believes that they are within OS1, and they will further clarify to the Planning Commission whether or not they fit that OS1 and allow the Planning Commission members to determine. Thank you. Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Mr. Chris Harrison, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please. And please go ahead.
Hi, Chris Harrison, 820 Westchester. I've lived in Grosse Pointe Park since 1985. I'd like to know, why isn't someone disclosing the forecasted operating costs, the business plan, and the projected taxpayer obligations to the citizens before this forum?
So I think that's a 2-part question. So part of that has been disclosed in the FAQs, and we'll continue to do so as we update this FAQ sheet, and has been discussed in City Council minutes and MOUs. In regards to disclosing the other operating costs and such, I do believe, and Jaime Rae may be able to follow up from me, that will be presented on Wednesday to the Planning Commission, and we'll go from there. Jaime
Sorry, I
Rae?
guess you didn't. Sorry, Nick, I don't think you heard my question. Why aren't you disclosing that before the public forum?
I'm going to ask Jaime Rae to clarify, please.
So the process is to provide the operating budget to Planning Commission and ultimately to City Council. At this point, we don't see that it's necessary to have, I mean, I think you can sense that there's some hostility toward the project from this group of folks, and where we want to be able to answer all of your questions. We want to go through the proper path with Planning Commission to review that operating budget. That then will go to and distribute to the residents, but it's premature to discuss that before Planning Commission.
So when will we find out? And will there be a chance to understand that before votes are held?
So the Planning Commission has the opportunity to review everything, and if they determine that they have, and Nick, you can fact check me on this, but if they feel as though they have enough information on the site plan to move it forward, they have that ability. If they feel as though they don't have enough information, they can ask for further information, but the operating budget is going to be shared with Planning Commission in advance, and we'll have they will have the chance to review it in detail.
Well, I think the reason you sense so much concern, and maybe not hostility, but concern, is it seems like those things won't be known by the taxpayers before their representatives vote on them. It sounds like you're confirming that concern. Is that correct?
Is that question for myself or Jaime Rae? Sorry about that.
Whoever has the ability to answer it. It seems like some people have said they only know certain parts and not other parts. Whoever best is able to answer them.
So we have shared that information with the city manager, and that information was reviewed. Nick, if you want to answer how the process goes and how traditionally these types of submittals work, I defer to you.
Okay, so typically with a project like this, and obviously this is something that of quite this magnitude, the city hasn't had too many of these, but the process formally would be that the developers would submit a site plan. Our building official would review that site plan, and then we would go forth with to the Planning Commission for their review. In addition, which has never been done before by the city, we had an independent plan review by OHM advisors look into the zoning. Typically, there is no requirement to have an operating budget as part of a Planning Commission meeting. And this is something that, probably will go to City Council for their consideration, but otherwise, in a Planning Commission meeting, they're simply just looking at the site plan and whether there's any variances that would further need to go to the City Council or in Zoning Board of Appeals.
In that typical process, are the taxpayers paying for the operating costs, or is that solely the responsibility of the property owner?
I guess it would depend on the type of project it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Leah.
Okay. Lee Kirtley, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Excellent. Lee Kirtley, I'm a park resident, 1004 Balfour. Please explain why it's appropriate to use 75% of DDA funds yearly for this project, and what message does this send to other businesses in the DDA district?
So I can speak. The DDA in its minutes did approve funding for up to $75,000 for operating and support services. It was the determination of the DDA board that this was the best use of those dollars. And so if there's any other questions regarding that, I would certainly entertain. please email myself. I'm actually the DDA director at this time, or DDA coordinator at this time. And I can certainly forward that email over to the DDA for any consideration. Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Vikas, we're going to ask you to unmute yourself, please, and please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. All of my questions seem to have been asked, but I don't think many were answered. In early 2018, I asked the mayor about details on the upcoming art center. I was really excited, as being on a previous board from the Grosse Pointe Art Association as well. He said something like, "It's far too early and no plans have been made. Those details will be shared when the time is right." That night in February, in closed chambers, the council voted to vacate the alley for the art center near St. Ambrose. That night, there continues to be no transparency on this, even when residents are asking about it. And as a council member, I've asked for months to discuss this project. Again, the mayor says we aren't ready to discuss, but the website has had art center propaganda on it since COVID had dropped. Now, 2 days prior to the planning commission that is supposed to recommend this project, we have our forum for residents to be heard. But again, only 100 of them are allowed. I think we had more details about a friend's hot tub that came to city council than we have about this project. And it's concerning because of the financials. You mentioned 180 nights of proposed shows in a total year. I'm wondering how much of a total year that is. That's half of a year of nights we'll be having shows. That would be fantastic. But that's a lot of nights of traffic. That's a lot of nights of cleaning snow rather than cleaning our streets. That's a lot of nights of police safety. 180 nights extra of police safety is going to cost a lot of money. Plus we have Charlevoix after dark, Kirchhoff after 6. We have school plays and concerts at their own wonderful auditoriums that already exist. There's lots of police presence and our residents are paying for this. I'd really like us to hit the brakes on this before going to planning commission. Something else that really concerns me is our vision of Detroit. We're going to be putting up a 58-foot wall entering our doormat or doorway to Grosse Pointe Park. That doesn't say much about welcoming. There used to be a 26-unit apartment building that the city bought for $1 million, then demoed for who knows how much, and we sold that to this project as part of those 4 plots for $300,000. That should be made well aware of to the residents. Again, my concerns about the Detroit engagement. Jaime Rae, you mentioned there was some approach of the East Jefferson Chalmers recently, but then you backtracked and said that really was just an email you sent and a voicemail left. So I'm wondering why we're waiting so long to engage our neighbors to improve the bridges that we're trying to make, especially in today's current state of affairs. Thank you.
I can go ahead and answer in regard to Jefferson East. I think someone had asked me, has there been any reach out to Jefferson East? And that was maybe several weeks ago where I had left a message for Josh Ellings and another member of the board, John Stroh. Since then, I had multiple conversations and also a presentation to Josh, and Nick participated in that presentation as well. And Nick, if you could kind of share a bit of your feedback and how we collaborated. Not only was there collaboration in recent weeks, but there was also collaboration from the beginning, not when I was involved, but several years ago, of discussions with Jefferson East and their board for review of the site plan, the elevations coming from the west to the east, and modifications were made to the site plan based on the feedback from Jefferson East. And I think that that dialogue has been very positive. And if I might also add, we have had great deal of support from the businesses along Jefferson, both in Detroit and in Grosse Pointe, in favor of the Schaap Center.
So you're telling us you do have information prior to you joining the committee? Because a lot of these answers you mentioned, you don't have any information prior to June 1st.
I learned on the call with Jefferson East that there was a meeting that Josh told us about, told both Nick and I about, and Nick, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here. But yes, I learned of that at the August 4th presentation to Jefferson East. I wasn't aware of it before because I was not involved until June 1. So there you go, Nick.
Yeah, and Councilmember Rayland. So my understanding as well is that there was a meeting between the former city manager and the donors, including Dr. Schaap, that met with Josh Elling, and I believe the other gentleman is John Stroh. I hope I got that right. That they did meet. They did discuss at the time, apparently, this proposed project. And I do know that there was, some feedback back and forth between Josh Elling and the Jefferson East team to the developers of the project.
Great, thank you. I hope that continues in a positive direction as it is. I appreciate it.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay, the screen name that I see is Rembert. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And if you can, please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Kelly Rembert. I live on the 1000 block of Maryland. I was unable to join at the beginning due to this 100-person limit, so I'm sure this has been addressed already, but I haven't heard it. I'm very concerned about parking. I have trouble tonight finding a parking spot outside of my house. And you add in 180 nights of performances, and parking is going to become even more of an issue. Plus, something I haven't heard addressed in the time I've been on here is if there's a proposed parking lot in the library lot, right now that's a wonderful green space. My kids and I go there a bunch to go hang out during this COVID time. And also it's a great green space for collecting the rainwater. As we know, global warming is real. We're getting more frequent rain events. The 100-year event is not every 100 years. It's every year, every 2 years, whatever it may be. And will continue to be more. We have water in our basement frequently. And if you take away a permeable green space and put an unpermeable parking lot in, it's going to exacerbate those issues. What's being done to address parking and what's being done to address the issues of rainwater and sewer runoff?
Thank you for that question. So I may be speaking on behalf of Jamie, and Jamie can clarify after I'm done with this question, but as I did state, originally there was a parking plan that had been revealed in part of the public presentations by the Schaap Center team that showed an availability of about 600 spaces. The city did ask that they greatly reduce those spaces, especially because a lot of those, as you just stated too, had on-street spaces that I was particularly concerned and the city would take away from residents. Myself reviewing and our building department reviewing the site plan, it is available online as well. You will note on the Planning Commission, it's under agenda and such, but the plans are on there, and on the Schaap Center, they actually had under drains and other green space added specifically, especially for that stormwater runoff. Jamie, I can let you, is there any other part you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Because that was a concern of the city as well as, we certainly want to make sure that we're not adding additional, into our system.
Nothing's better than great green grass.
Next question, Leah.
Tyler Cliffman, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please. And
Hello.
If you could please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks. So it sounds like the parking plan for this project would rely on the space in front of the Ewald Library to be paved and landscaped to provide parking for this project. So I have two questions around this, one for the city manager and one for Jaime Rae. Who owns that property now? How much is it worth? And what is the cost of that development and who will pay for it? And what is the potential opportunity that we are missing out on for development of that site? If the answer is the city, then it should be clear that this is another hidden cost to the residents of this community. Not only is it far from the highest and best use of valuable land, but there's no demand for it if not for this project. So even with the project, the parking lot would be predominantly empty. So the follow-up for Jaime Rae is that since this is being described as a world-class project with seemingly unlimited fundraising ability, have you considered underground parking to limit the negative aesthetic and environmental impacts of all this surface parking in the entrance to our city?
Thank you, Tyler. So on the city part of the question, the lot in front of the library is owned by the city. At that time, the DDA is considering a parking lot for municipal use, as well as could be used by the Schaap Center. That budget had been $75,000, and that was in the DDA budget. However, City Council actually had the budget revised, and so that is not in the budget right now for this fiscal year for the DDA. And then I'll turn over the rest of the questions to Jaime Rae.
I think your other question was is there underground parking? Is that correct? Is that the question you had for me?
It was, has that been considered as a way to mitigate some of the excessive parking needs that have been raised by residents here tonight?
Yes, that was looked into, and it was too costly. So what we have is the minimal amount based on the feedback from the neighbors and the community on parking to meet code.
Thank you. Leah, next question, please.
Okay. The next screen name in the queue is WW. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please. And if you could, please go ahead.
Good evening. Okay, good evening. This is Wendy Ward-Rellen. I appreciate the public forum. This is something we've been asking for a very long time. So we do appreciate that. And as others have already mentioned, of course, it would be far more beneficial if all of the residents were able to speak their minds tonight. And I would ask that we do a follow-up of this prior to a planning commission meeting, and most definitely prior to the following city council meeting. My question tonight, I probably have a couple of part questions, regarding approvals with the city of Detroit and engagement with our neighbors. Any development at this very important gateway between Detroit and Grosse Pointe Park offers a profound opportunity to bridge our two communities, a very contentious border for many decades. What true engagement has the city and the developer made with the city of Detroit and Jefferson Chalmers is one question. And I can go back to these afterwards. What is the process for approvals with the city of Detroit? And how does the historic Jefferson Chalmers district and the Main Street overlay affect this development? In good planning practices, a very high profile gateway to such a prominent city, corners should not be utilized as a parking lot. A parking lot image, what image does this portray to our Detroit neighbors? A parking lot with a backdrop of a 58-foot high, more than 4-story solid brick wall. A block wall that faces directly adjacent to many apartment complexes in the neighboring lot. This is anything but neighborly or inviting and does not properly represent our front door, as it's been referred to as many times by some of the city council. Jaime, you mentioned that modifications to the drawings were made when you did discuss with Jefferson Chalmers. What were they? So what approvals do you have in hand from the city of Detroit? If Detroit has not approved, how can it proceed to Planning Commission and then the City Council?
Nick, I'm going to let you lead, and I'll answer any other questions that you're unable to answer, but I think you have most of these.
Okay. I believe the one question that was asked is there a current agreement and or has the city of Detroit signed off? Yes, there is actually an MOU agreement that was between the city of Grosse Pointe Park, the Urban Renewal Initiative, and the city of Detroit, Grosse Pointe Park, and Urban Renewal that stated the acceptable use of that parking lot over on Alter.
Which MOU are you referring to? Is that the one that was related to the city of Detroit agreeing to sell the property that was from last summer? Or is this a different MOU?
I do know this one was public. Wendy, let me, while I'm looking that up, Jamie, why don't you answer the rest? And Wendy, I'll get back to you with that. I've got my MOUs in front of me, so just one moment just to clarify on that.
Because
Wendy,
I did go back.
What was your first question?
Oh, sure. One statement regarding the MOU, though. I went back and I reviewed that, and it does have a statement about a possible performing arts center, but it doesn't explicitly address the corner lots at the corner of Jefferson and Alter. It is more related to the property that was sold from the city of Detroit in turn for opening up Kirchville roundabout, you know, the blocking on Kirchville and the GDOT bus stop. So I would like to know which MOU you're referring to, and if that can be made public as well, if it's a different one. So Jamie, the other question I had, and you spoke a bit to this, was the engagement with the city and the Jefferson Chalmers area. So have there been meetings with the city of Detroit? Because in the end, it's wonderful to be a great neighbor with the Jefferson Chalmers neighbors, and to get, just like you're getting our engagement, it would be wonderful to do the same with them. But in the end, it is the two cities that are the direct interest in this development, because part of it does lie in the city of Detroit. So has there been a meeting? Is there this final approval from the city of Detroit? Have they bought off on this? Because this does overlay into a historic district and as I said, a prominent corner lot.
So while Nick is getting that, yes, there has been a lot of back and forth with the city. The city gave site plan approval, and it was unanimously approved by city council.
Can you give me the date for that approval?
Nick,
I looked on the city of Detroit's website and I didn't find that.
we'll have to get back to you on the actual date. I don't have the actual date of when that took place.
Okay, I'll follow up with Nick then.
The most important part of the discussions with Jefferson East was the walkability, which I think we all feel, because I know I personally walk to other establishments in Detroit. I ride my bike in the bike lanes in Detroit. I like to travel on Jefferson just like everyone else. So the walkability for the community to come to the Schaap Center was very important. And
Can you address, you said there were changes made to the plans after meeting with the Jefferson East people. What were those changes?
there were modifications to the softening of the corner, but I can't give you any specific because I wasn't involved in that first meeting. I was only involved in the presentation in August and the discussions that took place. But I would, I'd strongly encourage you, if you have questions, for Josh, he might be able to give you more detail. And Nick, as you pull together the information from the MOU.
Was there concern with the Jefferson East and the city of Detroit over the parking lot on the corner and a 4.5-story tall block wall facing Detroit?
Not that I'm aware of.
That surprises me.
Wendy, just to clarify real quick, I'm trying to do my speed reading. It may be in another document, so I'll update that publicly on the FAQ sheet that'll be on the city website.
Okay, I'll email you separately as well, so that I don't have to keep checking the FAQ. Yeah, and again, I mean, it's just generally good city planning practices not to put a parking lot on such a prominent corner. And there was a lot of concern over the DPW being, the image that is portrayed on our front doorstep, and that being a bad image. That image currently is a solid block wall. This will be a solid block wall that's twice as high with a parking lot in front of it. So that's my final comment, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. Leah, do we have any other questions?
I still have 3 more members of the public who are in the queue for comment who have not commented yet. And then I have 2 residents who would like to make follow-up comments who have already commented earlier.
Okay, let's start with the new commenters, please.
Okay, Dr. Greer, you are next. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Jeff Greer. I live on Westchester, 900 block of Westchester. And my question is directed to Nick and Jaime Rae. So how long
Jeff, I'm sorry, we had you
and I know
cut
Jaime
out.
Rae's expressed optimism tonight. Okay, I know Jaime Rae is optimistic about fundraising, but it sure seems to me like there's a really good chance you're not going to be able to raise the money you need to complete this project. Is there a timeline for when fundraising has to be complete? What happens if we're sitting here another 8 years and we don't have that money raised? So I guess my question, Nick, is why isn't the city conducting a proper study gathering resident input into what that land should be used for? You're the city manager. You should be responsible for this. You should take charge and say, if this idea falls through, we're going to have another idea ready to go. So tell me how you would go about gathering citizen input into alternative uses for this land and when you're going to start that process.
Okay, well, thank you. So there's a couple questions in there that I'd like to address. One, there was a question about when is there a deadline for fundraising? Per the purchase agreement that was signed by the City Council in October of 2019, under obligation section A, I discussed that there would be sufficient funding. Once sufficient funding is commenced, then the transfer of properties would go over to the Urban Renewal Initiative. Is there an actual date in this? No. And your other question was why hasn't the city looked for other uses? Because as this purchase agreement states, as soon as that fundraising has been reached and this has been signed by the city and the urban renewal, that transfer of property will go to the urban renewal. So at this time, yes, the city still does own that land. However, there is a contract with the Urban Renewal Initiative that property will be conveyed over to urban renewal. I believe there's, Jamie, do you want to respond as well?
Okay, but Nick, yeah, I understand how the contract is set up. I just want to make sure you don't forget to answer my question about what you're going to do to investigate alternative uses for the land if the transfer doesn't happen. So just don't forget that, please.
So we are contractually obligated at this point to transfer over that land per the purchase agreement.
I understand that,
Jaime
but as
Rae?
a resident of the city, I like to know that when we have a place, that we have a backup plan if that plan doesn't work. I'm sorry, my connection may be freezing.
That's okay. I'm going to let Jaime Rae respond to the rest of your question.
You know, I don't know that I can answer that question, Nick, on behalf of the city. So basically, the property that's owned by URIF, it's their ability to do with what they want with that property under the agreement with the city and anything that's been approved. So it is anticipated that we will raise the money prior to breaking ground, prior to the transfer of the land. As for what the city would do with land if the funds aren't raised, that's a question for the city.
And at that time too, now that I understand more, that would have to be a discussion between the city and the urban renewal, because we do have an obligation per this purchase agreement. But you know, now after realizing I understand your question a little more, Jeff, so thank you. Leah, next question, please.
Okay, Kelly Collin, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Leah, can you try again, or is it?
I'll try one more time. Okay, since I am not getting a response, I'm going to move on to the next person. Username is iPhone. So I'm going to ask that you wait for a prompt on your screen that either asks you to unmute or says that you're unmuted.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
We can hear you.
Hi. Good. My name is Dick Schroeder, 700 block of Lake Point since 1983. My wife has lived in Grosse Pointe Park since 1965. Somebody else is talking over me.
Yes, I apologize for that. I muted that person. And just as a reminder for other people on the call, if you are not speaking, we ask that you please keep yourselves muted. I apologize, Mr. Schroeder. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Miss Leah. Once again, I've only lived here since 1983. My wife has lived here since 1965. We've seen lots of things happen in Grosse Pointe Park over those years. If you want to talk about some things that you could put there instead, you know, we used to have a gun shop at Maryland where the Point Park Grill is. Maybe you'd like to see a gun shop there? I don't think so. You know, I think what the Scotts have done over the years is phenomenal. And if they're willing to throw millions of dollars to that area, I don't see why anybody is objecting. I don't think anything they've ever done for us has turned out badly. And the tone of some of these people that are talking to you people, especially you city workers, you know, I apologize for any disrespect that you've been shown over the last year, watching city council meetings and then now listening to this. You know, it boggles my mind. And just case in point, Councilman Raylan, you know, when he's talking about information, he uses the word propaganda. I mean, that's just inflammatory. You know, why can't we all just be neighbors, realize that something positive is happening on that corner finally, and be happy about it? Gun shops, dollar stores, you know, you could have any plethora of things going in there if you put the stuff out. And if you think you're going to have office buildings, just drive on Mac and see all the vacant office buildings around University and Mac. Everybody's going to be working from home for a long, long time. I certainly hope this thing goes forward. I really do. And my question is, all these people that are concerned about how Detroit thinks about us, you know, I grew up on Alta Road. I know what the deal is. You know, I've been here since I was 5 years old, which turns out to be about 1960. And I've seen what this place has turned into, and it's a marvelous place to live, you know? And if we keep biting the hand that feeds us, nothing good is going to happen. Once again, I apologize to all the city workers that have put up with all the inflammatory, you know, language that's been used against you people. I know you've got nothing but good hearts and hard work. Thank you.
Leah, next question, please.
Okay. This is the last new public comment that I have in the queue. Username SR, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Okay.
Hello.
And if you can please go ahead.
Hi, this is Sangeeta Ralan. I'm on the 1300 block of Beaconsfield. First of all, I'm a little offended by the last caller saying that the hand that feeds us, I don't know who you're referring to, but I don't take handouts from anyone. So I have a few questions. The first one is, the meeting minutes, are they available regarding these meetings that are referenced between the City of Detroit and the Planning Commission or whatever committees there were, that can be shared with the public so we can see what was discussed and what was approved? And then my other questions, Dr. Greer covered those regarding the funding. So you don't have a backup plan if this doesn't work out. Do you have a backup plan if your budget goes above what you're required, or what you're saying is the threshold that's required to actually break ground? Because I know from the history of city projects, most have been over budget. So what will happen if you're over budget? Those are my questions. Thank you.
So from the city perspective, and thank you for those questions, I'll certainly look to reference that in our FAQ sheet of those minutes that had that discussion between the City of Detroit and Grosse Pointe Park. And further follow up on the question of if this project were, fundraising were not to happen, what's going to happen there? Well, certainly the city's going to look at alternatives if that were to take place. Jaime Rae, I'll lead you with the rest of those.
I lost track of the question.
So the question was about funding.
Can you repeat? Yeah.
Yes. So first of all, I guess one thing I didn't ask was how is that amount determined? The threshold that's needed, that's the funding required to actually pay for the center. And what if your budget is over what you are saying is the funding needed? Who will pay for that difference, or will the project just stop?
The project won't stop. The additional funds will be raised through philanthropy, and the endowment is set to spin off 5% that goes towards an operating budget, which will cover annual operating expenses.
And what's the status of that funding right now? Your goal?
The goal is 35 million, and 10 of which is endowment, 25 is capital campaign, 16 has been raised toward the capital, and 5 has been committed toward the 10 million endowment.
So what is the deficit then?
It's not a deficit. It's a goal. And so we have 9 million remaining for the capital campaign to reach its goal, but there is no deficit.
And then one final question was that how was that amount determined? Was that made public?
Which amount?
The 35 million that's required?
The 35 million has been made public through all the presentations. The 25 million capital campaign is based on estimates provided by the design team and CBRE. And the endowment was determined based on needs for operational expenses.
And this is all public? It's all posted on the city website? All these numbers, all the estimates and everything?
So the total goal has been published on the presentation that I've presented, I think, over 10 times now, and will also be presented at Planning Commission, and that includes the operating budget.
And it included that, so I'm sorry, I feel like we're going in circles. I know you said that it's 35 million, but how was that arrived? Like, how was that calculated? Is that all?
25 million is of construction budget. That's how the cost to construct the building.
So is it just a lump sum? How is that determined? That's all I'm asking. I realize you've told me what the amount has been, how you've come up with that. You know what, that's fine. I don't think you can answer. Yeah, I don't think you're able to answer it, but thank you for trying. I appreciate your effort.
Okay. Leah, next new comment, please.
Okay, Mr. Woodman, you are next. I'm going to ask you to mute yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for giving me a minute of your time here at the end. I just want to, put it out there that the art center, our art has historically had a restorative quality to it, and it brings people together. The art center is certainly going to bring patrons of the arts right into my neighborhood. And if we bring people together in my neighborhood, others are going to see just how great this neighborhood is, and they're going to want to live here. If they want to live here, that's going to support my property values over the long haul. And I'm actually pretty happy about that. Also, they're going to spend money at the local bars and restaurants. And the data I've seen on the internet suggests that each patron spends around $17 to $24 each time they come to a performing arts facility or an arts facility. That's going to add up to a really nice support for our local area businesses that are going to need it coming out of this pandemic. So I'm in support of it. I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to put it out there that there are supporters in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We're approaching about 9:30 here, so I want to wrap this discussion up. If there's any more new questions or comments for those who have not been able to ask. Leah, how many do we have at this time?
I currently have 2 new questions and the 2 repeats.
Okay, let's start with the first new question, please.
Mr. Habercorn, you are next. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time. I wasn't able to join until later, but it sounds like it's been another contentious meeting thus far. I'll try and be quick. Hopefully my questions haven't been asked. I'm on the 1300 block of Harvard. First question, I just want to know backup plans from the city. So Nick, this one's for you. If say 5 years down the line, things went wrong and the URF was unable to fund itself, what's the city's backup plan? Does the property ownership transfer back to the city? Are we able to sustain the operating cost and continue to support the facility? Or I'm just curious if any plans have been put in place. My other question is for the URF and the Schaaps. And this isn't meant to be a dig or anything. I'm just curious, just because of since I grew up in the Grosse Pointes and I've lived here for 6 years now, but this is a very hot topic. I don't know if anyone expected it to get this highly debated, but what will it take to kind of hit restart and solicit more community involvement? Not necessarily start from ground zero, but what's the URF's position on that topic? Like, are they 100% into this is the plan and this is what they're pursuing? Or are they open to pursuing different ideas that would keep the community from being so divided? Thank you.
I am. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
So I'll answer to that city question. Thank you, David. So like any other venture, certainly there is risk, that is taken with business. In particular, there is indeed, could be a risk with this business as well. And I think that's something that will have to be explored at that time if it indeed it looks like that there could be some trouble. Jaime Rae, go ahead with the rest.
Do you have any idea what the ongoing operating costs of a facility that size are? I know the city's going to provide most of the maintenance, but do we have any clue on if we have to support 10% of operations, what the annual operating costs are?
So as part of the presentation that'll be at the Planning Commission, there will be a detailed budget explaining those costs.
As far as the question in regard to community engagement, since I joined the Schaap Center team June 1st, I have made great strides in opening communication, answering emails, responding to phone calls, attending presentations, engaging the community. I believe that everyone on the Schaap Center team would like this to be a welcomed addition to the community. It is my intention and the goal of the board to further that communication and continue that open dialogue. I would hope that those that are on the call that have spoken to me personally or have reached out to me have felt that I have been responsive and transparent. I can't answer to what has happened in the past, but I can say that I am confident in the future that we will move forward in a cohesive, collaborative way. Again, I am a resident of Grosse Pointe Park. I grew up in Grosse Pointe Park and raised a family here. And I own a business in Grosse Pointe, and all things said, I think that this is a great opportunity to have more inclusion and better collaboration. I would hope that our residents see that and give everyone an opportunity for a fresh start and perhaps a little more approachable way of doing business with an organization like this. So hopefully that answers your question.
But does that mean the URF is open to soliciting more feedback from the community? Because the community has a lot of feedback. We have Trombley that's not used by the school system anymore. Like,
you know, David, it's a great point you bring up. We would love to talk more about how Trombley could be activated in the future. And there have been some recommendations for how the Arts Council could get engaged in that way. And community arts education is very important to the organization. And so, yes, we welcome that input. I welcome friendly and positive input going forward. I hope that everybody takes a step back and maybe thinks about how we can work together in a more cohesive manner, and that this is one step forward. I know this town hall has been asked for a long time. I certainly have been glad to see that it take place and have embraced it and encouraged it, and the foundation was happy to do it as well.
Thank you. Leah, next new question. And how many do we have of new questions?
It looks like I only have one new comment.
Okay, well, let's have that as the last comment.
Okay. Miss Valerie Brunner, you are next in the queue. I see that you have unmuted yourself. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. This is actually Brian Brenner speaking. I live on Lake Point in the park, and as this has gone on very, very long this evening, I'll try and be as brief as possible. Just a comment, I think this is an amazing possibility for our community. I think it would be a very fitting amenity for us here in Grosse Pointe Park. I think the donors have a long positive history of philanthropy around here. I think the two primary tenants being Grosse Pointe Theater and the Grosse Pointe Symphony also have been around for decades. They both provide tremendous opportunity for community involvement, both musically, acting, the theater, you know, to making costumes, making sets. I mean, there's just many, many opportunities for community involvement. I agree that there are some questions and details that I look forward to having answered in the future here. But those bottom line is those blocks on Jefferson have been grossly underutilized for decades now. And finally, we have somebody with some financial backing with a great idea. And I think it's interesting now that everyone is crawling out of the woodworks with better ideas in their minds. It's been 20 years that these properties have been underutilized with nary an idea or mention of some of projects to better them. And we have one now, so let's go forward with it. And I look forward very much to seeing groundbreaking in a year and seeing performances in 2022, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. So we're at about 9:40, so we're about an hour above. I hope that was able to provide some additional feedback that had been put through. I'd really like to thank those, especially Jaime Rae, for being a part of this, and to you, the residents, for asking your questions. I certainly have some homework on behalf of the city, and I'm sure Jaime Rae does in regards to adding your additional feedback and or providing transparency. And so I wanted to thank you, and please follow our city website, Facebook page, and our emails. In addition, for those follow-ups and or updates. And please have a good night, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.